It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. Now here's your host, Geno Jones.
Hey, weekend is over. What's happening, everybody? It's a Monday, brand new day, brand new week, the Geno Jones Show. I know you can see that sign behind me. You seeing Geno, that big-ass sign? Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could see that sign. Guess you're right. Subscribe, share, screen grab, like, and binge watch all my back episodes. I come to you Monday through Friday, unless it's a special occasion. There was no live show Friday, the best of, because I was honored to be a part of a radio telethon for the Shawn Jenkins Children's Hospital here in the Charleston, South Carolina metro, along with my other sister stations. Part of the Charleston Radio Group, we were able to raise over $231,000 for the Shawn Jenkins Children's Hospital, part of the Medical University of South Carolina. So thank you to all the listeners, this community here, as we call it, the Low Country here in the Charleston, South Carolina metro, everybody at MUSC and Children's Miracle Network, Jim Luttrell and Mimi. It was just an honor to be a part. Oh, by the way, the Geno Jones Show brought to you by CM Transportation. If your business, if you need dependable, reliable, on-time deliveries for your business, and maybe you've got like a transportation company and they're like not dependable, not reliable, and never on time, on that CP time, you need to get CM Transportation. Miss Carissa Carter. You can Google Carissa Carter. It's Corisa-Cater. Carissa Carter, CM, like Mary, CM Transportation. Now, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 in Chicago, 3:30 p.m. out on the West Coast. My normal start times and days. So I am honored. So I've got like my number one guest host and my number one legal mind who is... he was absent from the show, and he had a good reason, because he finished law school. But I'm excited to bring both of my special guests on camera, so it'll be like a co-hosting thing coming up in just a few minutes. First of all, how's your March Madness college basketball brackets doing? Did you fill out, let's see here. Did you fill out, did you fill out one of those forms that had all the college basketball matchups, and did you just have to... Was that you? Because your brackets got busted, right? Well, listen, I'm going off the grid. I'm not hating on the guys. UConn looks pretty unstoppable. Purdue with this big dude from Toronto, Zach Edey. We'll see what's going to happen, but UConn looks like they're going to be hard to beat. But I'm more excited. The women's bracket, yes, the University of South Carolina Lady Gamecocks, Coach Dawn Staley, the sister is repping. Them sisters is balling. I think the Lady Gamecocks could beat the men Gamecocks. They did make it to the NCAA tournament, but they kind of got knocked out real quick. So shout out to Coach Staley and all the Lady Gamecocks. I'm picking you all to go all the way straight to the top. Speaking of the top, I don't know about the top. It might be the bottom. Man. Wow. I don't know if you've been around the radio or TV. First of all, and I just got this news, breaking news, it was live on television like an hour ago. Sean Diddy, Puff Daddy, Brother Love, I don't know what name he's going by, but the name he might be adding to that is Felon, soon to be Felon. The feds, the Homeland Security, raided the homes, not homes of Sean Diddy Combs in Los Angeles and in Florida. He had this big old mansion. I'm like, they had the helicopters over and all these Homeland Security dudes with the jackets, HSI. I'm quoting my queen who said, karma is a slow bitch, and she don't cuss at all. She said, karma's a slow bitch, but she'll eventually show up. So I don't know. If karma's not showing up, The feds damn sure did show up to Diddy's house and raided his house. As a matter of fact, the raid is going on now as we speak. And from the Law and Order section of the show, the man who we affectionately, wink, wink, refer to on this show as Orange Jumpsuit Jackass Hitler. Yes, guess what? A trial date has been set April 15th for this is the hush money case, the New York City hush money case, when basically he had his former attorney, Michael Cohen, pay this porn star, Stormy Daniels, that's her porn name, like $130,000 basically to keep her quiet right before the election in 2016. Yeah, the chickens are coming home to roost. So that trial, the judge said, listen, no more delays, stop with the nonsense. This trial, jury selection begins April 15th. Isn't that the tax deadline day? It might be another deadline. However, the orange one kind of got a win in another court case. The court case that was dealing with the fraud, the New York fraud case. The New York Attorney General, State's Attorney, Letitia James, because black women are led, and we're going to talk about Fonnie Willis in a second. Anyway, so the New York fraud case, so today, the orange one was supposed to come up with a $464 million bond. Well, he found another court, what they call an appellate court, and one of my guests, he will explain to you what an appellate court means. But just to appeal, the judge who was seeing this case, so instead of having to come up with $464 million today, the appellate court, they reduced the bond. Now he only has to come up with $175 million. And they've given him 10 days to come up with the money. Now he's saying, oh, I got the money. The money ain't no problem. Well, he didn't have the $475 million, or $464 million. So we're going to talk about that. Meanwhile, in Fulton County, Georgia, the home of Atlanta, Georgia, the Fulton County DA, Fonnie Willis, in the Fulton County, Georgia election interference case with Orange Jumpsuit Hitler, Fonnie Willis has been quoted on record as saying, the train is coming. And I don't know if it's the Soul Train or the A Train or the J Train taking back to jail, but the sister ain't playing. She said, when y'all get through worrying about who I was sleeping with and dating, I'm not on trial, and the train is coming. Speaking of coming, first of all, real quick, happy birthday today, March 25th, actress Lark Voorhees. You saw a 90s TV show she was on, Saved by the Bell. It's kind of like what she was really known for. She's been in some other movies, and she actually did soap operas too. Speaking of actors or actresses, actor Laz Alonso. So he started off as a BET host. He was in Avatar. He was in Stump the Yard. He was in Fast and Furious. Laz Alonso, also the Big Nickel, along with Lark Voorhees, the Big Nickel, 47 years today. 47 years ago on today, a rapper who we now know as Juvenile was born. Happy birthday to Juvie. You know the song he made, right? Girl, I'm not gonna say it. Y'all know. Just Google Juvenile. Back that ass up. Okay, you made me say it. My mother's watching, and my number one guest co-host is about to come on camera. Happy birthday, Juvie, 47, NBA baller Kyle Lowry, 38. Speaking of rappers, repping the 313 and the 248, Big Sean. Big Sean. It doesn't big the dude, it's a skinny little dude. I don't know how he got the name Big Sean anyway. One of my guests, you could call him Big Sean. Anyway, Big Sean, 36 today, and happy heavenly birthday. Speaking of the 313 and the 248, to the queen. There's only one real, true queen of soul. Happy heavenly birthday to Miss Aretha Franklin, born on this day in 1942. She joined the Ancestors in 2018, and in one of the longest funerals ever known to man that was on television. As a matter of fact, by the time they wrapped up that funeral, it was 2019. Well, it felt like it anyway. Happy heavenly birthday to the Queen herself. Speaking of Queen, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, one of my guests is not a queen, he's a king. He is a professor, Chicago State University. He is one of the official legal minds and legal experts for the Geno Jones Show. And my number one guest co-host, James Evans had Florida. Cliff had Claire. Oh my God, I don't know, have y'all heard this video? Claire was talking about all the original temptations that she slept with, but she didn't use sleep. She used a word that rhymed with duck. I'm just saying. So, but Cliff had Claire Huxtable before he knew about her sleeping with all the temptations. According to Claire Huxtable herself, Charles Barkley got Gayle King with no ratings. Howard Stern may have Robin Quivers. Barack's got Michelle. But none of them have Keeler Carson, ladies and gentlemen. Along with Keeler Carson, Professor Sean Mitchell. Welcome. So I've got, man, I'm the dumbest one on the show because I got two professors as my guests. So y'all make me look and sound smart today. Key, how you doing? Welcome to Professor Mitchell, whose family, he's a professor, but he's more like my brother, repping the Shawty out, suburban Chicago. Wow. I don't know. Well, so Key, since we have an official, went to law school, so we've got the official legal mind. So should we start asking him about Diddy, or should we ask him about this trial date starting on April 15th with the orange dude?
Well, I would say let's start with let's go with the heavier. I would start with former president, or Orange Hitler, as you call him. Yes. I would start there.
Orange jumpsuit jackass Hitler.
I'm sorry, orange jumpsuit jackass Hitler.
Because I thought his middle names in there too, like Orange, and then jumpsuit jackass is the middle names in the Hitler. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So I got to put some respect on that name.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say let's start there and get that out of the way.
So Professor Mitchell, I want to get your take, because a lot of the media takes is he lost with the the hush money case, because the judge was like, look, what y'all not gonna do is play in my face and play with my mind. No more delays. This trial is gonna start jury selections April 15th. But in the New York fraud case, where what New York district attorney or state's attorney, Letitia James, he apparently got a reprieve. They reduced the bond more than half. He was supposed to come up with $464 million today, and the appellate court said that he only has to come up with $175 million, and he's got 10 days. So what an appellate court, for those who don't understand, explain to us, he appealed to who and what is the appellate court, and how could they overrule this judge who set the fine?
Okay, so in the United States court system, what we have is when you go to trial court, post-trial, every defendant has a right to appeal. So depending on the jurisdiction, like if I remember correctly, New York has trial courts, and then they have an appeal court, and then their highest court is the Supreme Court, they call them. They vary, but they're usually three. Okay, so he lost, and it's his every right to appeal the decision. Okay. So that's the process. But in the meantime, you still owe $464 million, okay? You have to place a bond on that.
Well, now, let me ask you, stop right there. Let me just ask you, why do you think the appellate court, why did they knock the bond down? Because he was supposed to come up with $464 million, and they knocked it down by more than half, only $175 million.
Well, let me say it this way. This is going to upset some people. And, when you go to law school, you have to kind of moderate yourself, because I can tell you, if I'd have heard this 4 years ago, you'd have heard me maybe not yelling and cursing at the judge because I was in law school at that point, and I know I couldn't do that, but I'd have been upset. But looking on it, first of all, the court could have very well looked at it and said, okay, he may owe $464 million, but he's going through the appeal process.
Okay.
And they could view somebody having to come up with $500 million as, you know, a little unfair, especially if they should win the appeal. See, the issue isn't that he was guilty. What they're going to be looking at in this appeal process is $464 million in some ways a violation of the Eighth Amendment. And what is the Eighth Amendment? It's about cruel, unusual punishment, and also putting somebody in the place that there's no way they can come up with the money. Now, we all have family members and people that went to jail for bonds that they couldn't come up, but they couldn't cry Eighth Amendment that this $500 bond is unfair for $5,000 because they don't view that the same way. I wouldn't be, you know, that alarmed by them reducing the bond, because here's the thing, that $175 million that he has to put up is going to go to the 464. So he still has to come up with almost $300 million. Now, I know there's a sale for Truth Social, but I just find it hard to believe that somebody's going to give him a $3.6 billion. I've been looking at where did that come from, and you can't really get any sources. So it sounds like Trump has some of his fanatics out there saying that they're selling Truth Social for 3.6, but I can't see anybody buying it for that. So let's put a paper clip in that. So with that case,
let me just jump in and ask you something. So you said, let's go back to the Eighth Amendment that basically says that, you know, you shouldn't, if I guess an appellate court, an appeals court feels that whatever the bond is unfair. Is that a correct way to look at it? Yeah,
it's basically like excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment of inflicted. That's just to paraphrase the Eighth Amendment. And so remember, in the United States jurisdiction, the Constitution is supreme. Everything else falls underneath that. And so,
unless you're Trump and you say you're gonna shred and just tear up the Constitution, and then that's a whole nother. But here's the question on that Eighth Amendment: what happens if you are bragging and telling the world and standing in front of every camera, "Oh, I've got the money. It's not a problem." So,
well, we know Trump is lying about his finances. So,
well,
I'm just saying that's hyperbole.
Look at that and say, "Well, hey, this is not unfair because you're the one that's on camera, every camera that you can find, saying I got the money."
But the court
can't do that, Geno. Yeah, you can't punish somebody just because they got a big mouth.
Yeah, thank you. That part, and the other thing, he's not saying it sworn testimony in a deposition from the court. It's hyperbole. It's salesmanship. As much as we may get upset, it is not against the law in the United States to lie.
Unless you're under oath in court.
Yeah, unless you're under oath. If you're not under oath, you can lie, stretch the truth. You can do whatever you want to. It's just what this society depends on the public holding you accountable, which, could go a whole lot of ways. So let me also say this. If any of you are curious about the 91 charges that Trump has, I like to,
they got knocked down to 88, right? It's only.
Yeah, well, that's if you count the Fonnie Williams they dropping out. But trust me, there's 3 more charges somewhere. He might not have paid. He might have stole a baby's lollipop. Who knows? There's probably more charges to come from him. So don't be surprised. But I'm going to stick with the 91 because I just feel like even though that judge reduced some of the things, what's probably going to happen is the Fonnie Williams team are going to go back, because those pleadings, they said, did not have enough as evidence. Let me give people a quick law lesson. When you go in front of a judge as a plaintiff or as the state, you have to make plain and clear pleadings towards the charges you're charging someone with. So I remember reading one of them, and it was vague to me. So I could see them throwing that out. I didn't read them all, because anytime you have somebody that's being charged more than John Dillinger, Trump is not hiring me. And it probably costs Trump about $750 an hour, which I know he's not going to pay. So I wouldn't have him as a client. But when you have somebody with that many charges, your job initially as an attorney is to look at these and see which ones can I knock out. You can't lie in your response. So if somebody says Geno has on a black outfit and I put that in the pleading, you can't come to the court and say the answer to complaint number 1 is no, I have on dark purple. Right. Okay, dude, we looking at you with a black outfit. And that's the way the judge looks at the charges when they come through. So, I mean, when you're charging somebody, like I think Fonnie had like 45 charges or something, a good attorney will be able to go through and maybe get some of that taken off. And then if you settle, if it's financial, or if you plea bargain when it's criminal, a lot of times it's horse trading. Hey, I already got him for these 20 years. You can't pile on years on the same charge. So there's a whole lot of things that we get from TV about court that doesn't happen. Nobody shows up at the last minute. Ooh, I found this evidence. All that stuff is already laid out. In the United States, you don't want to go to court. So 9 times out of 10, everything Trump is charged with, he'll probably plead out once all of the dust settles and he's back to being John Q asshole walking up and down the street and not holding, talking about I'm gonna be president. Once that ends, he's gone. His lawyers are going to tell him, A, you can't afford to pay us, and B, you're not going to walk away from this. So you need to go to them and ask, for something. So the Georgia thing.
Well, wait, let me just stop you there, because I haven't heard too many quote unquote legal experts say that. That's interesting, but the way you lay it out, because I was just going to ask you before you talked about the possibility of the orange one basically copping a plea, I was going to mention 3 people who initially Fonnie Willis charged with him, they've already struck a plea deal. So I was going to ask you, do you think that would influence Trump's case in any way? So you just answered that question.
Good lawyers are telling him that. But the thing about a good lawyer and a bad client doesn't make the optimum outcome. He's a bad client. And so he's not going to listen. He wants to fight. And at some point, when you have all the evidence laying in front of you, some of these things he's not going to escape. We heard him on the phone with what he said. Now, they threw out that particular charge, and I never went back and read it, but it was probably just worded poorly. Because we heard that. You heard it?
11,000. All I need is 11,700 votes.
But the way they tried to frame it, which a good lawyer should, is he's basically saying, I'm short by that much. I'm not asking you to give them to me. I'm asking you to go back and recount. See how I can, if I decide, I can just go in and make it sound. I think the problem, let me speak as an attorney. The problem with Trump's attorneys is they kind of act like him. And that's not good in a court. You can't bulldog your way through it. Judges don't want to be disrespected. Prosecutors and judges, even though there's a line of separation, these people work together every day. Hey, man, they're going to be fair, but the disrespect, the out here in public, these judges, the prosecutors, the investigators, all these people hear that stuff. So he can't be punished all the time in court for it if there's not a gag order. But trust me, I'm in my chambers evaluating something that's my decision, and he's standing up there talking about the judge is a crook, and the judge is sleeping with the clerk.
And threatening people, threatening judges and the prosecutor. So let me just, on that note, and then I'm sure Keith's got a question. So what if Trump's attorneys say, hey, listen, all right, guys, listen, can we work out a plea deal? Can Fonnie Willis say, oh, no, the train is coming, like I told you?
No, she her obligation as the state is to at the very least, entertain it. And the other thing is, because first of all,
but what does that mean?
The lawyers can ask it, but Trump is the client. If the client isn't really pushing that, And even if the lawyers ask and bring it back to the client and the client says, no, I don't want to do that, I want to fight, you have no choice but to fight. At the end of the day, the lawyer works for the client. If you ever notice in a court proceeding, they're not talking to the lawyer. The lawyer is just speaking for the client. Right. And so it just says Donald Trump. It doesn't say Donald Trump, an attorney at law, unless they're involved in stuff like in the scandal. You have some attorneys in there. But again, they're just a list of people who are being RICO'd by the state, on a charge. But I find that I tend to believe Trump hires people that at least will do what he wants to do or think like him. Yeah. I don't think they're going to Miss Willis and asking her for a plea deal. We would have heard that kind of information leaks. So no, they're not doing it.
You had a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here I'm thinking of the reality of the court cases, all of them, not just with Georgia, New York,
Yeah, New York, he's back up at it again with the lady about the defamation.
Exactly.
Re-entered the scene.
Yeah.
And he's still, quote unquote, saying things that could be defamatory of Professor Mitchell. I mean, that's true. Listening.
Yeah, the other dynamic is he also faces the charges, not to cut you off, he faces the charges with the federal government for what he did in Georgia. That
right.
Getting going too.
Wow.
Right.
So, unless he wins the presidency, it's going to be real difficult. He's not that much Teflon.
And that's
go ahead, Ms. Carson.
And that's where I wanted to what I wanted to address with you, Professor Mitchell. That is the goal, to have Trump serve time. I'm not getting that as the goal. I'm getting the feeling that the goal is get him out of here, get him off the ballot, get him financially responsible, because really trying to jail him is not realistic.
Okay, so the crimes that probably hold jail time is the January 6th, if he's tied to that, and possibly the Georgia thing on two fronts, with Georgia and the federal government. The Stormy Daniels thing, no, that's a civil matter. The defamation thing, unless the judge just gets tired of him defaming her, he could impose a penalty, but that's far in least. The other thing is, I think that when we hear him getting caught up, we think about, does he get jail time? But it depends. The Georgia stuff, we don't know enough right now. That hasn't went to trial, and that's the jail time stuff.
But
the rest of the stuff could make him ineligible to be president.
Right.
Fraud. So they're running two things at the same time.
Unless I heard it wrong, I could have sworn I heard a lot of the commentators saying that this hush money trial, which is scheduled to start April 15th with jury selection, that was an actual criminal trial.
Yeah, but I got to look at that, because I've heard, I know they're bringing it, but they're bringing it under campaign finance.
Yes.
And so under campaign finance, it would have to be, look,
I got it.
So you remember Edwards? Edwards basically did what Trump did.
Yeah.
And Edwards pled to avoid actually going to jail, because yes, he could go to jail, but nobody, unless like there's a couple of congressmen or a dude that ran the mail fraud across the border in North Carolina. He was a Republican. He went to jail for doing similar stuff, but he was messing hands into the election. Again, the election thing will probably get you prosecuted. The hush money thing could get you prosecuted if you committed campaign election fraud in conjunction with like wire fraud and other things. There's really nothing criminal about him paying an NDA. Where the criminal activity came was when he used campaign finance money to pay somebody off. So I have to look at the legal code to tell you whether he could actually go to jail for that with Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, because let me ask you this, Professor. So the dude who was only following the orders of the dude that put him up to it went to jail. Michael Cohen.
Yeah, because he actually committed criminal campaign finance for him.
But the dude that gave you the instructions could do less time
listen
than the
where
dude
Michael
who followed your orders. Really?
Remember, Michael is also is an attorney and an officer of the court.
Yes.
So Michael knowingly took his personal money. He mortgaged his house to pay somebody off to be quiet about a event before election. And he lied that money was a campaign expenditure. See, the fraud, it's not that he paid Stormy Daniels. It's that he used his money and got reimbursed from campaign money. And so that's what a fraud is. And he's an attorney. He knows better. And so it's not like there's an extra law for attorneys, but the accountability. Trust me, that law says something like a fine of $5,000 and up to 2 years in jail, which means you might get jail, you might not.
Well, Michael Cohen got the full jail time.
I think he did like what, 8 months or something like that? A whole year. Yeah.
All right, so let's segue. What is your take on what happened? So I guess my first question, Key, you may have one, but when I got home and I saw like the graphic, the big giant graphic at the bottom of my screen, and it said Homeland Security raids Diddy's homes, and they had a live shot in LA. I guess one of the news helicopters, and you saw these dudes with the Homeland Security jackets, like the FBI jackets. Homeland Security, what would?
Well, but it's a trafficking charge.
Oh, go ahead, Key.
That's what I figured. I've been looking for it.
It's a trafficking charge. So once you say trafficking, you in a whole different category.
You're right.
Yeah.
I got it here from Variety. I just is put out at 2:15 Pacific, so that's what 2 hours.
Yeah.
East Coast time.
So, yeah. So
and they were in California and Florida.
Yeah.
But there also is a possibility they come into Miami too. So
they may be.
Well, that's what.
Well, they said Florida, so maybe that's where they are. In Miami.
It's Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
And then in LA, it's where the Playboy Mansion is. Home or something.
All right, so here's what's happening. Some of that accusations, according to the inside sources, some of the accusations come from R&B singer Cassie's claim.
Yes.
About him. And then I didn't know this, but according to Variety, that back in December of this past year, a lawsuit was filed that he raped a 17-year-old girl in 2003. So
yes.
I apologize for me, although I used to do urban radio and all those things. I don't follow everything that's going on.
You ain't
I
feel
real old man about it. But
come on, because this just happened, like you said, 5:15. That was their byline. When I walked in about maybe a half hour later, and I had the TV on, I'm like, who? What? Diddy? Homeland Security raids Diddy's homes. I'm like, what the hell?
And here's so I want to say this to Cassie. There have been many complaints, by the way, because we have to put everything in context with P. Daddy, Diddy, whoever he calls himself now. But we have to put everything in context. There have been complaints throughout the years of sexual impropriety. Now, let's back up a little bit and look at R. Kelly, right? So R. Kelly, it takes 30-something years from the initial child minor right case. Right?
Sparkle's cousin. You're right.
That's right. Sparkle's cousin.
Sparkle's niece.
Right.
Yep.
It takes 30 years before we get to a place of prosecuting R. Kelly for all of these crimes that have, by the way, been reported, settled in court. I mean, settled outside of court.
Right.
Okay. So I think that law enforcement right now, they want to, they say, okay, we don't want this to get 30 years down the line, because trust and believe at some point where it is applicable, where people can file charges, some people are going to start coming after other entities because I told you this man raped me. I told you this man kidnapped me, and you did nothing. So we don't want another case where you got 45 women lined up, Bill Cosby. And you get what I'm saying? So I think, Geno, where it may seem, a bit over the top,
no,
I think they're trying to get ahead of it and try to shut this down before this gets out of hand.
Well, Professor Mitchell, I didn't know my co-host went to law school. Look, he got me impressed.
I didn't.
But hey, you see, I didn't have to
Come on,
correct
you
her.
You played one on TV, Key. But listen, on that note, let me throw this in, Professor Mitchell. I don't know, you may not have heard it. Key, I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know. You've been busy, but I don't know if you heard that Russell Simmons got served in Bali.
Now listen, okay, go. He's
been accused like Diddy and R. Kelly.
Listen to me. How old was Kimora Lee when Russell Simmons met her?
I think like 18, 19,
yeah,
right?
Oh no, she wasn't.
She was younger than that, Key?
Oh yes, she was.
How old was she?
Like
16,
15, thereabouts.
Oh, so he pulled an Elvis, basically, right?
Thank you. That's right. Oh, I'm just going to sit her on the shelf until she becomes of legal age.
I could believe that.
And listen, again, this has not been a secret with Russell Simmons. He had a particular type. He liked young models. These may have been right, and I gotta say allegedly because I don't know. They may have been underage, but there is a type for Russell Simmons, and this is not something that has not been, talked about in the industry. And again, it's that thing where people in the industry are turning their heads.
But folks are kind of defended Russell, and they were able to kind of mute it and push it down.
Harvey Weinstein. This is all the same.
I think it's important because it reminds me of the Bill Cosby situation. And I can remember having these debates on Facebook. Cliff Huxtable is not a real person.
Amen.
And people made it seem like Bill Cosby and the character Cliff Huxtable were one and the same. And they're not. I can respect everything that Bill Cosby has given to entertainment. I love Cosby Show. I still watch it when I see it because it reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of great times. But I'm speaking to Black folks right now. Cliff Huxtable isn't real, and if that person did that to your mom, your sister, your daughter,
that's true.
You want to kill a brick about them, to quote the old folks from down south. Same thing with R. Kelly. I love R. Kelly's music. It hurts me that it's somebody from Chicago that I grew up not only in Chicago with, but in the music industry with. Because I've met Robert several times, know some of the people that worked with him, but I'm going to be honest. Industry-wide, it was common knowledge that he was doing those things.
Well, let's say this, Professor Mitchell. Forget industry-wide. Anybody that lived in Chicago from the 90s on knew of, witnessed. I can tell you, listen, they could have called my mother to testify. Just she didn't see anybody in the act. But
it's important I point this out though. R. Kelly had enablers, and some of them weren't enabling him to do what he did. What I'm saying is they didn't help him in life. He had been molested and assaulted. Yes. I've worked in counseling and therapy sessions as a counselor in situations where children have been abused. Usually when a child is abused, they go on to be an abuser, because that's what they know about. That's what love has taught them.
Yes.
So a lot of people failed him. His family failed him. The school he went to. When I see teachers that say, oh yeah, we knew R and he'd come and hang out and everything. None of those people are on trial for what R. Kelly did. It doesn't absolve him from it, but it shows you how society failed him. Because when you don't punish a child for doing something and show them there's consequences of their action, you basically enable. And so people enabled R. Kelly just because he could sing, and they took advantage of a brother who could not read and write. So think about that. All he had was his talents and his sexual promiscuity. And that's what he's lived his life. It's similar to what people say about Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson never evolved from that 5-year-old kid we saw on the stage. So how do these people deal with adult relationships and separate what is an adult and what is a child when you never mentally evolved from a child? R. Kelly didn't. Michael Jackson didn't. I'm not saying Michael Jackson did anything. I'm just simply laying out the body of work. And for what we may know is Puffy probably covered up a lot of things that happened to him. I think it's important that Black people sit down and really confront things that go on in our families and our communities when it comes to child molestation, rape.
Well, let me just say this. Let me say this, Professor and Keith, because Keith and I know we've talked about it many times. Full disclosure, I met Robert before the world knew him as R. Kelly. He was in a group called Public Announcement. Natalie Cole had a show called The Big Break. Way back in 1990, I was doing a morning show in Los Angeles. He had a manager, I can't even remember the brother's name, who was his manager before he got to Barry Hankerson. He was in a group called Public
Announcement. Well, George from the George's Music Room was his initial manager. No, I don't know what happened to that.
This is a brother named Craig. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Because he was in a group called Public Announcement.
Right.
So this brother Craig knew that I was doing a morning show in LA. He got in touch with me. I'll never forget the Sheraton Universal, because they were shooting Natalie Cole's show in Universal City. So they were staying out there in Burbank. So Craig invites me up to their room, and he had a big, giant gray boombox. And he played, he said, I want you to hear this music. It was like a demo tape. He played it for me. I said, man, this is nice. He was like, Robert, he's a producer, and I'm trying to get him a deal. Now, this is what he told, this was in 1990, Google Natalie Cole's Big Break, because Public Announcement, they were the grand prize winner. They won $100,000. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm back in Pittsburgh doing a morning show. Born in the 90s. R. Kelly and Public Announcement, Born in the 90s came out. What I heard in that hotel room in 1990 was all the tracks that I heard on R. Kelly's debut album. So I'm saying that, Sean, to say this. They got to a point to where there were people who was close to Robert who was trying to pull his coat. But what Robert was doing, this is not speculation. I mean, I am people who were close to him. I'm not going to name folks. They were trying to pull his coat. But as his star grew, he felt he could get away because he had fame, power, money. I mean, he's working with Michael Jackson and, winning all kind of awards. He was, at that time, the king of R&B. And the people who tried to really talk to him and save him from himself, he phased out of his life.
But Geno, I think we have a sickness, and I can speak only for our community, of which I am a member, the Black community, right? We have a sickness where, the don't air our dirty laundry theory that we have, right? And I know you remember this when we talked about the R. Kelly specials that came, when the ladies came out and accused him that I think it was 3 of them surviving R. Kelly. I think
initially it was 3, and then they did part 2, and more came out.
Okay, so the teacher. Remember the music teacher that
she was a music teacher at Kenwood High School.
And you and I, we had a disagreement, but I said people like her could have stopped this then, because she said she knew it was strange. She said on camera that she knew this was wrong and that Robert should not be hanging around these little girls. He was on the school property. If she did nothing but call the police,
but wait a minute,
and said this grown man is on school property.
Right, but Key, you could, I mean, don't stop it, Miss McLean. Hell, the principal, all the security,
but my point,
everybody knew. I lived.
But my point is,
from Kenwood, so
is that people are guilted because we have this thing in our community where we feel that if we send someone to jail, call the police on someone, we are bringing down our community, our Black men, our Black women. And so we think it's some kind of sick way that if we do nothing, maybe it'll go away. Or maybe we trick ourselves into believing that me calling the police is not going to solve the problem. So why bother to call the police when all they're going to do is come over, make a brouhaha, and nothing will be done. And then he'll be mad at me.
Let me jump in right there to the point you just made. An R&B singer, she went by the name of Sparkle. R. Kelly produced her hit. Yeah. Sparkle told everybody that she could. As a matter of fact, there was a writer named Jim DeRogatis, and I know Professor Mitchell.
Right.
He was the first in the Sun Times back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He did like a damn near a whole week of stories about this based on the quote unquote P tape. And with Sparkle, it went to people. Sparkle was the one that everybody looked at. Oh, you just mad because he didn't produce any more hits for you. You mad because he didn't want to sleep with you. You wasn't really that. So everybody attacked Sparkle for telling the truth.
And basically blackballed her. They blackballed her and her producer Steve because here's the funny part. I don't like talking about this, but I was actually friends with Sparkle and her producer Steve.
Wow.
And so I knew, that's my point. I'm on the peripheral. I just happen to be music executive person, and that makes friends with artists because I was one of those people back then saying to the artists, don't give your life to this record company. You can do all this by yourself. All the artists in Chicago that know me, when I had locks down my back and I was doing all the guerrilla marketing and working at the label, will repeatedly tell you, I used to tell them, well, they'd be like, can I get a deal with your station, with Red or with Sony? No, you don't want to deal with Sony. They screwing over people. You want your own distribution deal. You need to do your own thing. So while this is going on at the House of Blues or at the different clubs, spots we was at, nobody knew. Sparkle, and if I saw her today, it'd be like we had never stopped talking. Good person. She introduced her niece to this man. So again, a lot of us in Chicago, even when the first trial went on, knew what was happening. Other people passed that tape around. I was in the music industry. I'll never say any names because it doesn't serve any purpose. But they were passing this tape around. I know people that got charged with child pornography
in Chicago.
Okay. I never saw it, and I'm not saying that just because I'm on camera. I knew that was a little girl, even though she had an adult body. I work in colleges and work around high school students. Look, it's some beautiful young ladies, but I'm a grown man. There's nothing that somebody under 40 can talk to me about intimately.
And they
You're
babies.
on my level.
Let me just say this, Professor Mitchell and Key. Key, this is how it got so twisted, and I'm sure you heard this. I'm sure Professor Mitchell, because like you said, Sparkle was from the West Side area, and Professor Mitchell grew up. Maywood is a suburb of Chicago, western suburb. Sparkle's brother-in-law wound up being a drummer for R. Kelly.
Right.
Well,
and played for him for years.
Her biological daddy.
Yeah. For years.
In the band, this dude's band.
Yeah. So I don't, and I just want to bring attention to one thing as I'm watching our time here. To bring it back to Diddy, I just want to say that I'm not an attorney, but I do know one thing is true. It's not about what you say, it's what you can prove. Now, Cassie came out with her story, and they hushed that up really quick, rid of her. But this gentleman that came out just recently,
yep, young producer,
whatever he did, he had receipts. And whatever Cassie had to help corroborate, whatever he had, Homeland Security is now on the job. So because Homeland Security does not show up.
That's to two of your houses in 2 separate states.
That's right.
Let me say,
know something.
Go ahead,
I agree with everything you say, but I got to play the devil's advocate here.
Okay.
While Homeland Security is showing up for Puffy and R. Kelly.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
Sex trafficking going on.
You're right.
And security still ain't did nothing, and they didn't fumble the bag.
That's true.
Because they let him kill himself in jail.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
different thing.
Say it.
They basically put it all on his assistant.
Giselle Maxwell, the woman, right?
Yeah. So while I'm happy, no matter who it is, that Homeland Security is going after pedophiles, let me tell Homeland, if you're listening, listen close. I'm the jack of all trades. I've drove a truck. If you want to stop sex trafficking, station Homeland Security at every rest stop, every truck stop, every depot, and you will eliminate probably 90% of the trafficking. I tell you somewhere else, Homeland Security, get real close. You need to go to these churches. A lot of the pedophilia is happening in churches, you know.
And let's be clear so that people understand, trafficking is a trick word when it comes to what we're talking about. You don't have to have a busload of Malaysian women, Asian women from different countries. You could take a girl from Detroit to Illinois, and that's trafficking.
That's true.
So in other words, if you in Gary and you bring her over to Chicago just to go to Newtown and she underage, you are trafficking, sir. And there's trafficking happening on so many different levels that now the public is just catching up with it. The other dynamic is you have political opponents to liberal ideology in a free society labeling things as trafficking because it serves a negative purpose. They like to label the fact that a political party is trafficking, which is like the most sick thing you could ever hear. And let me say this finally and bring it back to what we were talking about. And that political group who talks about trafficking in children for sex support a guy who thinks his daughter is attractive and sexy. I have a beautiful daughter and a beautiful granddaughter and beautiful young ladies in my family, but I don't find them sexy.
No, that's true.
And so if you clean up your own house, this is for everybody. Because, you know, your grandpa that married your grandmama and they 20 years apart, and you find out that grandpa was 21 and grandma was 14, you know, and so that's what I'm talking about with us. We need accountability because there's a lot, people are attacking us, but if we don't take accountability for ourselves, there's no future to none of this.
That's the mic drop.
Amen.
Professor
there it is.
Sean Mitchell, I appreciate you, man. We're looking forward to having you. Keela Carson, I owe you dinner because your food is getting cold.
Yes.
I gotta let you go and get your dinner. Thank you both, man. This was a hot show. I appreciate both of you guys.
Thank you, Geno.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Professor.
Geno. Thank you, Miss Carson. I know you're doing big things up here in the cold with me. And so I will check you out. I will listen in. I have to listen in. You have a dope radio voice. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, she's repping. She'll be back. Hopefully, she normally comes on Friday, Professor Mitchell, but I got her. I talked her in to come in today, and then I didn't call her. So her dinner's cold, so I owe you dinner. I got to zell you some money Friday when I get paid.
I got you.
I love you, Keith. Thank you.
Bye.
Professor Mitchell, love you, dear brother. I appreciate you, man.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
All right,
all right,
man. Bye-bye. What a great show. Let me just lean over here. Bam. Wow. Okay. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. As always, God bless each and every one of you. You and especially you, most of all, the Geno Jones Show, brought to you by CM, like Mary, like my mother's name. CM Transportation, CEO Carissa Carter. If your business needs dependable, reliable, on-time deliveries, or maybe you have a transportation company and they're never on time, you can't depend on them, and they're not reliable, I got the answer for you. CM Transportation, Carissa Carter. Google Carissa, C-O-R-I-S-A, Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R, C-A-R-T-E-R. And you can find, as a matter of fact, I'll have her contact information. It was just so much stuff breaking at the last minute. But CM Transportation, based here in the Carolinas, but her company is nationwide. So one of the top transportation companies. African-American woman-owned company. So shout out to Carissa Carter. Thank you for being a supporter and a sponsor of the Geno Jones Show. Shout out to Markel Bailey, the official barber and hairstylist for the Geno Jones Show. You can check him out on Instagram, on IG, Kel B Cutting Up, KELBECUTTINUP. Allie Jones. Allie Jones is the official wardrobe consultant and stylist for the Geno Jones Show. Check her and her collection out on IG or Instagram. It's lx.n, like Nanette, NCL _ is that little dash behind the second, down at the bottom, and behind the second L on IG, Instagram. lx.ncl_. The next live edition of the Geno Jones Show is going to be Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, if you missed some of this episode, some of this show, go back and binge watch all this and all my back episodes last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My monologues were fire. Really, every monologue is fire. Once again, I want to thank my #1 guest co-host, Miss Keela Carson up in Detroit City, and Professor Sean Mitchell, our legal expert, who's a professor at the Chicago State University in Chicago. Thank you both for being my guests. We had an incredible show. I'll see you live Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. All right, until then, I love you. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of The Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube.